I'm Jordan Hatfield. This is Faster Film Critic. Today on the show, we're talking Stanley Kubrick's 1968 masterpiece, 2001: A Space Odyssey, with Kolter and Chase Fugel. 2001 is a sci-fi epic starring Keir Dullea, Gary Lockwood, and William Sylvester. If you haven't seen this movie, let me give you a little preview. Get in, Dave. We are going cinephiling.
Film critic.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hello, Jordan. Hello, Chase.
I'm stoked to talk a little 2001.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Hell
A
yeah.
little Space Odyssey.
Just a little one.
Have you guys ever heard of this film before?
No.
No, a little too little.
I am just going to go out on a limb here and assume that you both love this movie.
That's a safe limb to walk out on.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What is it about this film that you guys love so much?
Good
You're
God.
making me think that you didn't love it.
Maybe, maybe not.
You better check your tone, Jordan, before I eject you out into the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space.
Tone has been checked, but I want to know, why is it that you guys love this movie?
Oh, dude, what? That's such an easy question to answer. You know, it's such a simple, straightforward story that can really only be interpreted in one way. I mean,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is, well, you called it a masterpiece in your opening.
Yes, many people consider this a masterpiece, but there is another group of many people who call this film boring.
Those people are stupid.
I absolutely agree with you, Kolter.
It's not like this movie hasn't been one of the most debated films of all time. It has. Some audiences, to your point, have complained that it's too repetitive, even tedious in places. Those people are people who always wear their pajamas to Walmart and the airport, and they don't know what they're talking about.
But tell me
That's my
why.
take.
Why are the pajama wearers wrong?
Is it wrong to say that the movie requires a certain degree of intelligence and patience to appreciate, maybe even understand? Because even saying you understand this movie is not, it's not fair. I think there's so many different things that you can take away. There's so many different interpretations that you can make from the themes of this movie and the visuals of this movie. And it is intentionally complex and thought-provoking. And even on its face, just from a simplistic standpoint, it's mesmerizing.
So to back up your point here, Arthur C. Clarke co-wrote this film with Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
And it's actually based on a book that Arthur C. Clarke wrote called The Sentinel.
Yes.
Arthur C. Clarke said that if you came out of this movie having understood it, then he failed as a writer.
Right.
In other words, it is their purpose to create a film
Right.
that isn't easily understood. And I would argue it's intentionally vague to the point that the viewer has to contemplate their own interpretation of the film,
Yeah.
which leads to a lot of conjecture.
Yeah.
But it is definitely an introspective experience. It is not a film that lays everything out for you,
No.
that you come away saying, what a great narrative, what a great story, what a great message, what a great meaning. You walk out of this film thinking to yourself, what did I just see? And it
Right.
requires you to not only think about it
Yeah.
and try and interpret it from your own internal perspective,
Yeah.
but also, I would argue, to rewatch it.
Yes. You know, there are several themes, especially during the first part of the movie, that are straightforward enough. And then those get built on by other ideas and themes that progressively make it more and more thought-provoking and more complex, which is why upon return, man, it really is it is a masterpiece.
I want to talk about the opening scene with the apes.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the best opening scenes in any sci-fi movie ever.
It is.
Oh, I agree 100%.
It is maybe one of the best examples of storytelling technique through cinema, which is show, don't tell. There's not a single line of dialogue that's uttered for that first Dawn of a Man, I think is kind of how it's dubbed. But yeah, it's brilliant.
And it's so simple. And
Yeah.
like you said, it lays the groundwork for everything to come.
Yeah.
But it's just apes moving around, but it's so entertaining.
Yeah.
Not only is it simple, but it's also profound
Very much so.
and thought-provoking
Yes.
and scary
Yeah.
and
Hell yeah.
unexpected.
Yeah.
For the first time when I turned this movie on and there's a bunch of apes dancing around a water hole. I was like, what? I thought this was a sci-fi movie.
Right.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is simple, but it is extremely thought-provoking, especially juxtaposed to what follows. Like I said, I have never seen a sci-fi movie start in a better way than this.
Yeah.
So you got these apes, and they're doing apish things, and their apish family dancing around their apish water hole, and then this monolith appears. By the way, did you guys know that the monolith originally was going to be a pyramid?
Yeah. I think even in the book it's described
Really?
as kind of this crystalline structure, but yeah, it was not a...
Monolith.
Right. Yeah.
I'm really glad they made this change, by the way. I think the monolith is cool. It's more, I don't know, I almost want to say scary. There's something about the monolith that I find frightening.
Yeah. Just this black rectangle. I mean, it's scary.
So unnatural.
Unnatural. Yeah, especially when it's juxtaposed to this kind of desert landscape. Right when the movie begins, that there's this, it's not even an overture necessarily, but it's like, you guys have seen Fantasia.
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't.
Chase.
Oh, no. I'm going to get grilled by Kolter over here.
Why haven't you seen Fantasia, Chase?
Open the
Chase.
pod bay doors and get me away from this conversation.
The only thing there's some comparisons made, but it sounds like, the beginning of the movie, it's like the beginning of everything, time, mankind. And it almost sounds like the orchestra is tuning up before you get that first opening shot. And you guys are talking about, where there's so all the apes are jumping around, you kind of see their very primal behavior. And then Jordan, you're talking about the monolith. One morning, one of them wakes up, right away notices this structure that's just there, just appeared. The look on that actor's face, even through the ape effects, is chilling, man. The way they react to it is chilling. And of course, what happens with the monolith throughout the movie, it's absolutely scary. There are so many different ways to interpret the monolith and what it means. But yeah, it is terrifying. Something just so simple as a black rectangle.
I'm so glad they didn't make it a pyramid.
I know.
Yeah.
This feels like it came directly from space.
Yeah.
And the music around this scene
Yeah.
is very haunting.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It gives it almost a horror feel. Yeah. And the cinematography, there's the scene where you're looking up the monolith and
Hell
you
yeah.
see the moon, just a
Yeah.
crescent of the moon, and the sky's
Yeah.
like pink and red. And then you see the sun start to come up over the top of the monolith.
That's
It's
awesome.
such a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Like
contrast.
a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. And yet very frightening.
Yes.
And then the apes begin to evolve, and it's understood that this evolution comes from the monolith in some way.
Yeah.
His first act of evolution is to take the bone and use it as a tool, and he starts beating up other apes with it.
Right.
Violent scene.
Yeah.
And then he throws the bone up into the air, and it's
Yes.
spinning, and all of a sudden, we move to the spaceship in space.
Yes. Yeah.
All the evolution of man and technology is understood in this moment,
Yeah.
and it is so effective.
Yeah. Something really hit me watching this movie recently. We transitioned from a scene in which the bone is used, obviously, as not necessarily a tool, but a weapon. He throws it up in the air and the bone is spinning in slow motion, and it slowly transitioned to that ship floating through space. It's kind of suggesting that there's this weird form of beauty in our aggression. It's both unsettling and kind of fascinating. But I mean, there is stuff like this just sprinkled throughout the movie,
That's really interesting. I got that violence is inherent in our natures.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
what I took from it. Like, we are inherently violent beasts.
Yes.
And that has continued throughout all of humanity.
Right.
But I didn't see the beauty of that like you described.
Yeah.
Explain. What exactly do you mean there?
It's the way in which it was depicted, like the way in which it was shown to the audience. Like this, I don't think the violence was being celebrated by Kubrick as much as it was just, if violence is a part of evolution, which clearly that's kind of one of the intended themes, was that this concept of death and rebirth and how it echoes through the movie's entire run, about the evolution into the next phase of life. So there's a suggestion that violence is an inherent part of that. But that's kind of how it hit me, is just the transition and then this kind of soft classical music and this beautiful shot of this spinning ship, and we kind of, the camera flies through it. I mean, it's just, man, it's like hypnotizing.
Are you saying that you don't think that humanity would be as evolved as they are today without violence? Because that is a really
Yeah.
interesting thought that I have never thought of until you just mentioned it.
So I often think about like what a species has to go through in terms of phases of evolution to get to a point in which the realization occurs that violence isn't good. And so it's like they have to go through this step in order to get to these utopian stage. So yeah, I guess I am saying that. I mean, it's
Wow.
these are the kinds of things I think the movie makes you think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm going to spend some time thinking about that. Back to the apes. Check this out. Although it is clear that there are human actors playing the apes,
Yeah.
the apes are still quite effective
Yeah.
in their appearance and their movement.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So effective that the team of Planet of the Apes, which came after 2001 Space Odyssey, approached Stanley Kubrick and asked him for tips as to how to create the apes.
Okay.
What did he say?
Stanley Kubrick told him to off.
Good.
68, man. Not only was this movie impressive in terms of those effects, but like the ships,
Yeah.
dude. Like it took place almost 10 years before Star Wars, and it's still, man, some of those shots rival things you see in Star Wars.
And not only the shots, the story.
Yeah.
So they insisted that all the special effects were shot in camera. And at this period in time, they used a lot of blue screens. But blue screens aren't as good as green screens, and it would create problems with the image,
Okay.
the quality of the picture. And if you go back and look at the original Star Wars, which was shot using blue screen,
Yeah.
you can see the ships aren't as sharp. They don't look nearly as good. Now,
Right.
if you throw on a 4K of Star Wars, it's
Yeah.
been re-enhanced.
Yeah, it's all cleaned up.
Yeah, you would have to go back to the original film to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But because they shot the special effects of 2001 in camera, they all hold up today in a way that's absolutely incredible,
Oh,
in a
yeah.
way that Star Wars and other sci-fi films of the time can't. It's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah, and the sets. Holy shit. The first time we see
Oh
it,
my
that
gosh.
space station where Floyd enters it, and there's this kind of cool long shot where you see the natural curvature of it's like two big rings connected with this stem in the middle, and a set with the
Yeah.
floor gradually curves upward as it goes. Oh, man, it's just so cool, and it only gets better from there.
My next question is, how have we made it this far and not talked about the music or the sound design?
Oh, the sound is employed impeccably. And that includes the use of absolute silence in some of these scenes.
The main song throughout this film, Also Sprach Zarathustra,
Right.
is so perfect
Yes.
for this
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
And another interesting little tidbit for you. When they were creating this film, they had a temporary track.
Okay.
So they brought in Alex North to create an original score for this film. And as he was working on his original score, they used a temp track,
Okay.
right, to just give kind of an idea, a mood for this film.
Yeah.
Well, Stanley Kubrick fell in love with the temp track.
Okay.
And when Alex North said, "Here's my music," Stanley Kubrick said, "Thanks, but no thanks. We're going to stick with the temp track." And the entire film, they used the temp
Oh,
track.
shit.
Yeah. In fact, Alex North ended up using his score that was meant for 2001 in a film called Shanks. So you can hear bits and pieces. I don't know exactly what, but
Okay.
you can hear bits and pieces of the original score that was meant for 2001 in Shanks. And 2001 score is nothing but the temp track. And it
Okay.
works so perfect.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, it does.
It's pretty cool.
Have you heard those scores?
No, I haven't. And I haven't seen Shanks, so
Oh,
I should
man,
probably do
I
that.
gotta check that out.
I'm definitely glad they stuck with these. It sounds so much like a ballet.
Yes.
The entire movie.
Oh, yeah. It's like the perfect complement because a lot of the actors' movements are balletic, like the waitress coming through
Yeah.
the, what do her shoes say? Like space shoes or some shit. What does it
It's
say?
like Velcro shoes.
Something
like that.
grip, space grip shoes.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And she's having to walk, very intentionally. And the absence of gravity kind of lends itself to this ballet like these movements. So, yeah, it's a perfect
Yeah.
compliment.
So cool. And then that pen scene,
Yeah.
right as she walks in with the grip shoes, and then you see the pen floating.
Yeah.
It's such a cool effect.
Such a cool
Yeah,
shot.
it is.
I am going to argue that the reason 2001 A Space Odyssey has reached such critical acclaim is because of the special effects.
I'd say a large part for sure. That part of the movie lends itself to every other part. The ballet, the story,
Yeah.
the HAL 9000, like it all just feels flawless.
Yeah. So much patience. The willingness to kind of hold on certain shots for some people might feel like too long. For me, I was just like, oh, I could sit here and watch this forever. So yeah, the intent Jordan, I think you could absolutely make that argument. You can make the argument about its themes, its ideas. A lot of movies, artwork in general, you always have the argument of art imitating life, life imitating art. Those themes are riddled throughout this when you look at everything from FaceTime to the use of iPads, artificial intelligence. I mean, it's amazing.
So there's a tremendous amount of restraint in this film. The film is very slow paced.
Yes.
It's very vague. The narrative is quite simple, although the themes are heavy. The themes deal with cosmic intervention and evolution and technology and existentialism.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these themes are very deep
Yes.
and philosophical, but the narrative itself is quite simple. A lot of silence in this film.
Yes.
In fact, the film originally wasn't meant to be silent. Originally, there was narration.
Oh.
Whoa.
I know, it's an interesting thought,
Yeah.
but Stanley Kubrick decided to remove the narration. He wanted the silence. I think this is absolutely fascinating. Kubrick said that just like a piece of instrumental music without lyrics can still portray very intense emotional ideas,
Yes.
he wanted 2001
Yeah.
Space Odyssey to do the same.
That's so cool.
He was trying to create a piece of art, a piece of music without lyrics, something that is felt
Right.
on an emotional level and an intellectual level that isn't communicated through words. And I think he nailed that.
Yeah. It shows so much respect for the viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold your hand through this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yes. That said, sometimes I feel like the simplicity and the vagueness in the narrative of 2001 is a weakness. Now, I know we're going to debate this. Hear me out. Sometimes I feel like 2001 fails to present new ideas. It just opens the door for me to think in new ways, right? In other words, 2001 isn't answering any questions. It's only asking questions.
Yeah.
And I understand why a viewer would walk away from that feeling maybe bored due to the slowness and the vagueness and the
Yep.
lack of a message in this movie. However, on the flip side, a patient viewer who is interested in contemplating the intellectual and philosophical depths that this movie wants to explore finds a treasure trove of ideas.
Right.
But those ideas take place within me. They don't all originate in the film.
Right.
And so I bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
There's sometimes I watch this film and I think, man, I just wish the story had more to it.
Yeah.
And I just wish there was a little bit more to kind of sink my teeth into from a story perspective. And on the other hand, I think its vagueness provides so much for me to sink my teeth into. And I bounce back and forth between that. And so I understand why some people are like, this film is an absolute masterpiece in every way, shape, and form from start to finish.
Right.
And other people like, man, that movie was boring.
Yeah.
I love that this movie asks questions. Just how much credit do I give it for original ideas that I come up with because of those questions? That's the question.
That was really eloquently put, man. Like, I think a good story can go one of two ways. It's either super well developed, very straightforward. It gives you all the information you need. And then there's another kind of story that gives you some information, and then your own imagination has to fill in some of those blanks. I've always enjoyed that a little bit more, especially when it comes to good science fiction. We haven't talked about it yet on this podcast, but we've talked about it outside of the podcast, which is the first Alien movie. You never know where it comes from. There's essentially two alien species in the movies. You don't know where either come from. And to sit around and think about, the why or the how did this happen or what was the association between those two species, whatever it might be, like that's so much fun to kind of sit around and talk about with your friends as opposed to just having it laid out in front of you. The monolith in 2001, where did it come from? The implications are that it's extraterrestrial, but it's never necessarily explained. It's not, that theme is there, obviously, but it's not interested, nor does it care in explaining, what it is, what its purpose is, how did it get there, who sent it, that's awesome in my opinion.
It makes it like your movie in a way.
100%. I could not agree with you more. I do not want answers about the monolith. I like that mysteriousness and that intrigue. But the story is so simple, I could sum up every detail of the story to you in just a couple of minutes. And the runtime of this movie is 2.5 hours. But you mentioned the franchise Aliens.
Yeah.
It's also really interesting to note that Stanley Kubrick spent years developing the aesthetic of the aliens that were going to appear in this movie.
No kidding.
Years. And they went through several different iterations.
Really? I'm kind of
of
surprised he
appearance.
went that far.
Yeah, me too.
That was the plan. That was the goal. And then at the end, he scrapped it all and is like, we are not going to use, physical aliens. The aliens are going to be represented as non-physical.
So much more intriguing.
It sounds like he just had so many different ideas, like completely carved out this universe and this story.
Right.
And it's felt, even though you see so little. He thought about putting aliens in it, but decided not to. He probably wrote pages and pages of what he was going to do with aliens or with narration. And it's still felt, even though it's not there.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
And you have to remember this film was made in 1968.
It's hard.
And I don't just mean to point out that this film was old.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
No. I get
What
it.
was the world like in 1968?
Yeah.
Think about this.
Yeah.
Man hadn't walked on the moon yet.
Right.
That didn't happen until July of 1969.
Correct.
There was still thought that there may be life on the moon at this point in time. Think about this. We hadn't even seen a picture of the Earth from space yet.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
The famous
That
blue
is
marble
insane.
picture
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the Earth, the first picture of the Earth that was taken from Apollo 17 in 1972, which is why when you look at the pictures of Earth presented in 2001: A Space Odyssey, you don't see the continents.
Right.
You just see kind of a blue sphere.
Yeah.
Why? Because Stanley Kubrick thought at the time that the atmosphere wouldn't allow the continents of the Earth to be visible from space.
Huh.
Like, that's fascinating.
It is, dude.
Like, our understanding of space and other life in space was so small in 1968.
Dude.
And by the way, it's still so small today.
Well, yeah,
but we definitely know more now than we did then. And when you watch this movie, you've got to take that into consideration.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned this earlier, Jordan, that I mistakenly thought that Clark had written 2001: A Space Odyssey before Kubrick produced the movie. And in reality, the book came out after the movie, and it was kind of written in conjunction with Kubrick, and Kubrick had a lot of kind of influence over what story he was telling. With Arthur C. Clarke, in and of himself, he was a smart guy, really smart guy. I mean, he was back in the day saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to be communicating via satellite." Way before that happened, I mean, he was really kind of a forward thinker, and I don't know how closely the two of them worked, but I wonder if any of his influence helped Kubrick kind of make those aesthetic choices, man. Because it's all stuff that I noticed watching this movie. I was like, God damn, to get that, proportion vaguely correct, and the way that it would look pretty correct, even when they're advancing on the moon and they're getting ready to land. I was looking at the moon. I was like, good God, man, that looks real. Like, that looks like the real thing. I mean, it was just amazing.
In fact, many people believe that Stanley Kubrick was involved in shooting, quote, the fake
moon
moon
landing.
landing, unquote. You know what I mean? Because 2001 was so impressive. I mean, granted, when you watch the people walk on the moon in 2001, they're walking as if they're on Earth. As if the moon has equal gravity to Earth.
Right.
And the real moon landing doesn't have that.
Right.
But that's how impressive this
Why'd you
was.
say it like
Crazy.
that?
Can you
Jordan?
imagine? First, you have the Planets of the Apes crew approach you. How did you guys make your monkeys? And then the U.S. government. Hey, can you stage this for us? Can you direct this?
So then we hit the intermission.
Yeah.
I doubt that there's truth to this, but it's still really fun to talk about anyway. After the intermission, we have the Stargate transformation scene.
Right.
That gets super crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The theory is that people like to trip out on acid during that scene.
Oh, I believe it,
and
of
the
course.
intermission was put in place so that they could step out, drop their acid, and hit their high when that transformative
I
scene
mean,
hits.
68.
Well,
That's like
exactly,
the perfect
man.
time for that, too.
Man, I was doing some real third-eye trippy ass shit, man. So I said that 2001: A Space Odyssey has the best opening scene of any sci-fi movie ever with the ape sequence.
Yeah.
I am also going to say that 2001: A Space Odyssey has the best transformative scene in any sci-fi movie ever.
Okay. When you say transformative, you're talking about when he's...
I'm talking about all the trippiness.
Okay.
Dude, all the
the
trippiness
trippiness.
after the intermission that comes.
Okay.
And are you saying with acid or without acid?
I've never done acid, so it would be
Point of
without.
distinction.
Yeah, good point. I imagine it's only enhanced with acid. I have never experienced that. But the way that they shot these transformative scenes, these trippy psychedelic scenes, is pretty amazing. They dropped water in paint and then zoomed in on it in a microscopic level.
Yeah.
There's swirling chemicals. They use photo negatives. Like, the way they came up with some of these scenes are really, really cool.
Yes.
Really trippy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Hal for a second.
Okay.
I think Hal is such a cool antagonist.
He is. Maybe one of the scariest.
And he's nothing more than a red dot.
Yeah. In a very calm voice.
One of my favorite scenes in this whole movie, I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite scene, but one of my favorite scenes is when Dr. Dave Bowman has left the ship to get Frank. Frank's floating out in space, and he's trying to retrieve his body, and he comes back, and Hal won't let him back into the ship.
Right.
Dave finally gets back on board, and Hal starts to suck all the oxygen out of the room, and Dave puts on a space helmet, and he goes into the back room, and he slowly starts to unplug Hal.
Yes. Yes.
No, Dave. I'm scared, Dave.
So crazy, that scene. It's hypnotic.
It's chilling.
It is chilling. It's like terrifying.
And it's so slow.
Yes.
And deliberate.
When you did the voice, Jordan, I was like, the hair started standing up in the back of my neck. There is something just supremely unsettling about it.
You're kind of a little too good at it. I don't like it.
And then Hal starts singing the song Daisy.
Oh yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another cool little tidbit for you.
Oh.
The reason why Hal sings Daisy is because that is the first song that computers ever really sang in real life.
No shit. It's like,
Whoa.
There's an ode to the very first song that a computer ever sang. You can Google it. Look it up on YouTube.
Damn.
You can hear the computer singing Daisy. It's pretty cool.
that's creepy.
Pretty cool. Such a cool scene. Such a heavy scene.
Yeah, it is heavy.
I think there's something to that. There's a theme there, right? It's like seeing somebody you really don't like get their ass kicked, and in the middle of them getting their ass kicked, you start feeling bad for them. Like, this guy was a complete despicable piece of human trash, and now he's being tortured. And
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I didn't see Hal as a piece of trash.
Well, no. I didn't either, to be clear. But after he ejects what's-his-face into space, you think, oh, God, yeah, he's doing his job. Technically, he's fulfilling his programming. But he still killed a guy, in the worst.
I know, but I didn't see him as a villain. This is what I saw. This is how I interpreted Hal.
Yeah.
Hal knows there's a secret. This whole monolith thing on the moon and everything is a secret. It's top secret.
Sure.
And Hal is cued in that Dave and Frank are keeping this secret.
Right.
And then he observes them speaking in secret about dismantling Hal.
Right.
And I saw Hal as operating to protect the mission and not to just murder these people. I think he saw there's secrets going on between these two that is dangerous and destructive, and they're talking about, dismantling me.
Right.
I am overseeing this mission. They are the threat.
Sure. Well, sure.
Did you guys see that different?
Well,
Did you guys see that different?
I will remind you, good sir, that you did describe Hal as an antagonist.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I mean, I did think he malfunctioned. He did kill the other crew members. Okay.
Well, an argument can certainly be made either way. I think, yes, I see your point, and it's a valid one. But I think audiences inherently are going to associate that kind of cold, distant approach to just murdering somebody as exactly that, despite the fact that Hal, that's what makes a good bad guy or a bad gal in a movie relatable, is that you can see where they're coming from, and you got a two-dimensional bad guy, nobody cares, but when it's more complex, and there are things that you go, well, I don't know, I can see that point of view.
So was the ape in the beginning that was protecting his waterhole with the bone, was he a bad guy? Was he a villain?
Same thing. No, it's the same point, man. And I'm sure that's got to be intentional, because, again, we talk about how many ideas in this movie are repeated throughout. That's absolutely one of them. So I think it's a fair point. It's a freaking perfect debate for this movie. He is portrayed to be evil, the red eye looking straight into the viewers.
I see Hal as scary because I think technological advancements are scary.
Sure.
But I don't know that I see him as a villain. I don't know that I see him as the bad guy. I see him as scary, but I don't see him as the bad guy, and those are different things.
Because he's programmed to be
unknown.
purely objective, you have a point there. He's been intentionally designed to do A or B or whatever it is. So it's not an evil intention. It's not an act that was carried out because of malice or something like that. It's just simply, it's programming. And we got to discuss the monolith. The monolith is much like Hal. It is an inanimate object with programmed intentions that are objective and impartial. Chase and Jordan, you both mentioned earlier how it was not originally conceived to be a just black triangle. And when we think about a black triangle, so dude, you can argue over many aspects of this movie, one of which is how to interpret what this monolith represents. And one of the more interesting ideas that it represents is the screen itself. When you look at the shape of the monolith, it is the exact ratio of the frame in which this film is shot. And that's intentional. What it means exactly has never been purely explained. But I think that's an interesting aspect to its design. I don't know if you guys have heard that idea or that theme, but what do you think about that shit?
I think I need to think about it for another 10 minutes, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before. I'm going to need to think about that one.
I think the monolith, it embodies the unknown, and I think that's kind of what the movie did too, and that's the draw to the movie.
I don't know how to answer that question, Kolter. Again, this movie is so deep that it requires a tremendous amount of contemplation.
Yeah.
I have never thought about the monolith in that way. I always just viewed the monolith as a tool used by these non-physical, pure intelligent entities to level up humanity. And whatever that means, I don't know. That's always how I viewed it.
Like some sort of assistance or...
Yeah, so let's take a step back and view the movie as a whole. You see the dawn of humanity with the apes.
Right.
You fast forward through time, through all of their evolution and technological advancements until we get to space. We land on the moon and we discover another monolith.
Right.
And as soon as that monolith is found, it acts differently than the monolith on Earth.
Correct.
In that it signals the monolith out towards Jupiter.
Right.
And it is because of that signal that humanity is even motivated to plan this mission out to Jupiter.
Right.
And it's during that mission to Jupiter that Dave, I don't know what happens to Dave, but whatever happens, he ends up...
That's a good... I think if I were to summarize the movie for somebody, it would be that, what you just said.
Dave, I don't know what...
But Dave ends up in this room.
Yes.
For a long time, there was a lot of confusion and interpretation of what this room is about.
Right,
the book explains it in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
And since then, Stanley Kubrick has come out and given his interpretation of the room, which is there is this godlike, pure, intelligent entity without form that brings Dave into this room to examine him.
Yes.
There is no sense of time.
Right.
And so what we see on screen in the room is what Dave is experiencing in the room.
Right.
But these intelligent, formless entities are observing him. They're observing his life in this room, his death, and his rebirth.
Right.
And then he becomes a superhuman and returns to Earth. And we don't see what happens when he returns to Earth.
No.
That is for us to imagine and not for the movie to tell. But according to Stanley Kubrick, that is what's happening at the end of this movie. Just like humanity takes ants or other insects or bugs and creates structures to put them in so that we can observe them, that's what's happening. These formless, intelligent entities have taken Dave and they've created an artificial environment to contain him.
Yes.
And we are being observed. We are being studied. And I think the monolith, I always interpreted the monolith as nothing more than a tool used by these entities that triggered the next step in their observable evolution.
Yeah.
But that's a great question, Kolter. I'm going to need to think about it. For sure, this is some trippy shit, guys. Let's go ahead and rate this film. What do you think of 2001: A Space Odyssey on a scale of 1 to 5?
I love this movie. Roger Ebert said about the film Mulholland Drive when it first came out, and he said it's one of those movies that refuses to be over. Gosh, I think that's such a perfect way of putting it. That's exactly how I feel about this movie, and I could sit and talk about it forever.
Yeah.
5 stars, for sure.
This is not just a film. It is an experience. It is one of the best examples of the power of cinema. I think its ideas of artificial intelligence are probably more relevant than ever. It's truly a masterpiece from its visuals to its sound design. It's an amazing piece of art, one of the most perfect science fiction films out there, and it is absolutely a 5 for me as well.
There's no arguing that this is one of the most inspirational movies ever made. It is a landmark in cinematic history. Star Wars, Star Trek,
Yeah.
Alien, Dune, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Gravity, WALL-E, Arrival, Interstellar, Guardians of the Galaxy. There isn't a sci-fi movie that doesn't borrow from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
What was done in 1968 was so far in advance of what was being done at that time
Yeah.
that it still largely holds up today.
Yeah.
From a visual and special effects standpoint, this film is truly a masterpiece, and its reach will continue through time and space. This film is that important. However, I do not think that the narrative in this film is a masterpiece. I think that it stands on the incredible special effects and music and sound design and the scientific questions that it asks. I don't think this film can stand on its narrative alone, particularly in its conclusion. I think it's too abstruse to be truly profound, and I think that holds the film back a little bit. I wish there was just a little bit more there. I wish there was a little bit more story for me to latch on to. I appreciate the questions that it asks. I appreciate the vagueness and the mystery and the intrigue. I recognize there are no answers to the questions the film is asking us. We do not understand what life is like in outer space. We do not understand where we came from. We do not fully understand evolution. So many great questions here. I just wish there was a little bit more in the story for me to latch on to, and because of that, I've got to give it 4 stars. 4 stars is still a great film, and so much of this film I hold in the highest regard. But 4 stars from me. Please let us know what you think of 2001: A Space Odyssey. We would love to hear it.
I'm not the biggest sci-fi fan, and I'm pretty picky when it comes to my sci-fi movies. But there are a few that I just love so much. And one of those is Ex Machina. Like 2001, it asks these big questions about artificial intelligence and existence and what it means to be human. And it does it from this fly-on-the-wall perspective. It doesn't tell you how to feel. And I love that so much about movies. It is one I think you should definitely check out.
Thank you for listening to Faster Film Critic, and please join us next week when we talk The Amateur, a 2025 film directed by James Hawes. You can also follow us on Letterboxd, Cinetrack, and Instagram. Email us at fasterfilmcritic@gmail.com. Hit us up with questions, comments, feedback, or review requests, and please share this episode with your movie-loving friends.